Midnight on Black Creek Road. Black Creek Road was not a place for rational thought after midnight. The asphalt ribbon wound through pines older than the state itself, their needles like claws reaching for the moon. Fog hung low, thick as cotton candy, but infinitely less sweet. The air itself felt heavy, burdened with a silence that hummed in your ears, promising something unseen and unwelcome. It was on this road, under the sickly gaze of a waning moon, that John and Sarah found themselves. Their city car, a beacon of false security, felt alien here. The headlights cut anemic beams into the fog, doing little to pierce the oppressive darkness that pressed in from the sides. Silent companions. Uncertain journey. John gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. The silence in the car was broken only by the rasp of their breaths, each one a tiny act of defiance against the suffocating atmosphere. Sarah, usually a font of conversation, stared out the window, her reflection a pale ghost against the passing trees. "Almost there," John muttered, more to himself than to Sarah. The words felt hollow even to his own ears. He wasn't sure what there even was anymore. Just away from this road, away from this feeling. He pressed down on the accelerator, a futile attempt to outrun the dread that coiled in his gut. The engine whined in protest, the sound amplified in the stillness, and then silence. The car lurched violently, throwing them both forward. Beneath the twisted oak, a wheel betrayed. The car skidded to a halt. John swore under his breath, the sound swallowed by the fog. He knew what it was before he even saw the flat tire. Of course it had to happen here, beneath the skeletal branches of a monstrous oak that looked like it could have been plucked from a nightmare. "What is it?" Sarah's voice was small, laced with fear. "Flat," John said, his voice tight. He hated the way his hands trembled as he reached for the flashlight under his seat. The metal felt cold against his skin, a stark reminder of the chill that had settled deep in his bones. Stepping out into that fog, into that silence, felt like inviting something terrible in. Shadows whispering warnings. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. "Stay here," he told Sarah, hating the tremor in his own voice. He wished he could be braver for her, but the fear was palpable. He pushed the door open, the sound like a gunshot in the stillness, echoing through the fog like a warning. The fog pressed against him, damp and cloying, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly sweet like blood. He circled around the car, every instinct screaming at him to get back in, to drive away, flat tire be damned. His heart pounded in his chest, but something held him there, a morbid curiosity perhaps, or a sense of duty to protect Sarah. Or maybe the realization that whatever waited for them in the fog wouldn't be outrun so easily. It was a presence, almost tangible. The flashlight beam danced across the gnarled roots of the oak, revealing a patch of disturbed earth, as if something had been hastily buried. As he got closer, he saw it. A child's doll, half buried in the dirt, its presence both innocent and sinister. Its porcelain face was cracked, one eye staring up at him with a chilling emptiness, as if it held secrets of the past. John recoiled, a shiver crawling down his spine. He could feel eyes on him now, watching from the depths of the fog. He turned, swinging the flashlight beam across the darkness, but there was nothing there. Just the fog, swirling and shifting like a living thing. Then he heard it, a slow, deliberate clapping coming from somewhere behind him. He spun around, his heart pounding in his chest. The clapping stopped, and then from the fog a figure emerged. It was tall and skeletal, draped in a long black cloak that seemed to absorb the light. It had no face, just a swirling void where its head should have been. The fog clung to it as if it were a part of the darkness itself. John stumbled back, his foot catching on a root. He fell, the flashlight clattering away into the darkness. He scrambled back, his hands scrabbling for anything to defend himself with, but there was nothing but dirt and leaves. The figure moved with an unnatural grace, gliding towards him as if it were floating on the fog itself. John kicked out, connecting with something solid. He heard a gasp, felt something cold and hard slam against his chest. Then everything went black. When Sarah finally dared to open the car door, her ears were still ringing with the echo of John's scream. The night was eerily silent now, the kind of silence that presses down on you, making every small sound seem amplified. The fog had thinned slightly, but it still clung to everything, muffling the world in a damp, oppressive blanket. It was as if the fog itself was trying to hide the horrors of the night, to keep them shrouded in mystery. She called out for John, her voice trembling, but there was no answer. The mist seemed to swallow her words, leaving her feeling more alone and desperate with each passing second. Then she saw it, a dark stain on the ground beneath the oak tree, glistening wetly in the moonlight. It was unmistakable, a crimson mark that stood out starkly against the pale earth. She stumbled towards it, her hand flying to her mouth as a sob escaped her lips. The reality of the situation hit her like a physical blow, leaving her gasping for breath. It was John's blood. And sprawled beside it, his eyes staring up at the uncaring sky, was John himself. His body lay there, lifeless and cold, a stark contrast to the vibrant man she had known. His face was contorted in a silent scream, his hand reaching out towards her as if pleading for help that would never come. The sight was haunting, a frozen moment of terror and despair. But it wasn't the sight of his lifeless body that chilled her to the core. It was something far more sinister, something that seemed to radiate malevolence. It was the doll, the porcelain doll from the dirt. Its presence was inexplicable, yet undeniably real, adding an element of the supernatural to the already horrifying scene. It was clutched tightly in John's hand, its single remaining eye staring up at her with a malevolent glee. The doll seemed almost alive, as if it were mocking her, reveling in the chaos and despair it had caused. The figure was gone, vanished back into the fog, as if it had never been. Only the chilling tableau under the oak remained. John forever silenced, the doll its purpose served, and Sarah, her scream dying in her throat as the full weight of her solitude crashed down upon her. She wanted to run, to flee back to the relative safety of the car, but her legs wouldn't obey. They felt like lead, rooted to the spot by a terror so profound it stole her breath away. The silence that descended was heavier than before, pregnant with unseen menace. It was the silence of a predator that had already fed, content to let the dread linger long after the feast was over. The fog seemed to press closer, tendrils of mist snake-like and alive. Sarah could have sworn she heard whispers within them, faint and indistinct, yet laced with a chilling amusement. Or perhaps it was just the wind, toying with her sanity as it danced through the leaves of the ancient oak. She couldn't take her eyes off the doll. It seemed different now somehow. Darker, as if the blood that stained the ground had seeped into its porcelain skin, staining it with something evil. The single eye, once vacant, now seemed to burn with a malevolent light, holding her captive in its gaze. A sob escaped her lips, a tiny broken sound in the vastness of the night. She was alone, utterly alone. Black Creek Road remained long after the sun rose, burning the fog away with its indifferent light, casting eerie shadows that danced on the pavement. The authorities found the car, its door still hanging open, a testament to the terror that had transpired, a silent witness to the horrors of that fateful night. They found John too, of course, lying motionless, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror, and the doll clutched tightly in his lifeless hand, its eyes seemingly staring into the void. But they never found Sarah, her disappearance adding to the chilling mystery. Some say she still wanders the fog-shrouded stretches of Black Creek Road, her sanity a casualty of that night, forever seeking a solace she will never find, her cries echoing through the mist. Others say she's out there, a vengeful spirit, seeking to claim others in her grief, her presence felt by those who dare to tread there. But whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: Black Creek Road remains a silent testament to the darkness that lurks just beyond the edges of the light, waiting to claim those foolish enough to venture there alone, a place where nightmares come to life.